Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us this week for this week's free webinar from LiveTake. And this week's webinar is Search Engine Optimization, a crash course. So in essence, this is a search engine optimization course for beginners. And we hope to demystify, if it's mystified for you, search engine optimization. My name is Chris Corey. I'm the principal here at LiveTake, and I'll be your presenter for today. So why don't we jump right into it. And as always, let's start with what you can expect to get out of this session. So the first thing is we hope to give you a quick perspective on search engine optimization, or SEO. The hope here is to try to get through to you why you want to know about this, even if you don't plan on doing any of the activities yourself. It really helps to know a little bit about search engine optimization and how it works, just so that you can help guide the path for this optimization for your own website and for your company, really. And also that you can keep your agency partners honest, just to ensure that they're doing the best job that they can for you. So in line with this, what we'll do is we'll give you a simplified view on how Google actually ranks your site. So how Google works in a real simple way. Then we'll show you your on-page SEO checklist. So the things that you need to look for on your web pages to ensure that they rank well in search engines like Google. Now, I mentioned here on-page SEO because there's also off-page SEO, and we won't be going over that today. And simply because that's probably just a little bit beyond what we want to get in a crash course. And we'll probably save that for a future webinar topic. So we're going to concentrate on-page SEO, and really it's the easiest one to apply quickly, and it's one that you can right at the end of this webinar you can probably get to trying on your own web property. And then I'll go over something very quickly on search engine optimization versus paid search, and our organization's view on that, and how you can use the two together to make each one of those ones stronger in terms of a strategy. So let's start then with, you hear it, you say it, what's it mean? So the term SEO, or search engine optimization, it gets thrown around a lot in conversations. And the challenge is that that's all that gets thrown around is that word, SEO. You don't really hear a lot of detail beyond that. So because of that, I think, as business owners, we all look at SEO then as some kind of mystic thing that's a black box, and you let others take care of it. Well, that's really not the way you should approach it. You should know a little bit about it. And what we hope to do is that through the rest of this webinar, get you comfortable talking search engine optimization, that you understand exactly what it is people are going to be undertaking on your behalf when it comes to optimizing your web page. And it's not that difficult. Although through this webinar, you'll find that there might be some parts of it that seem a little too techy. Don't worry about it. That's not important. What's more important are the concepts themselves, and that you understand that. So the best place to start then to find out some of the basics around search engine optimization is to actually ask Google. So let's type it into Google and let's see what we get out of that. Well, you get a lot of hits. So there's no lack of results on search engine optimization basics. There's a ton of content there. I went through a lot of this content, started clicking through some of these links, and I really came across that there was really a challenge here. And the challenge was either A, they cost money. So really they're just advertisements for a search engine optimization firm to do work for you. Or B, they're too high level and they give you a really high level overview, and then they cost money because that's the hook to try to get you curious about whether or not an organization knows about search engine optimization. Then if you think that they do, they want you to then buy some service from them. And then finally, if it wasn't, or if it didn't cost money, it was just way too technical. And that's because, it's the technical person who just likes to show off what they know that will give you all kinds of information for free. Unfortunately, you need to really be in their class, and the language that they use is a little bit too technical. So if you're just beginning, you're probably not going to absorb that very quickly. It's going to require further research on your part just to understand the language that they're using. So we hope to break through that today in this session. So why don't we, since this wasn't as fruitful as I had hoped it to be in terms of a search, we went right to Google itself and looked for their guide. And Google will provide you with a search engine optimization starter guide. That's the actual front page on the left there of their guide. Go Google that and download the guide. It's probably worth having. But I also found that had a little bit, again, a little bit too technical for the non-technical reader, so maybe not as useful. But the basics, according to Google's guide, are these following 14 things. And that's number 1, create unique, accurate page titles. 2, make use of the description meta tag. Again, that might not mean anything to you if you don't know anything about HTML. Improve the structure of your URLs, make your site easier to navigate, offer quality content and services, write better anchor tags, optimize your use of images, use heading tags appropriately, make effective use of robots.txt. Again, you probably wouldn't know what that means. Be aware of rel equals no follow for links. Again, you probably wouldn't know what that means. Notify Google of mobile sites, guide mobile users accurately, promote your website in the right ways, make use of free webmaster tools. So that's 14 basics according to Google. They call that basic, but we've made it even more basic. And I think at the end of this, you'll see that we've boiled it down to 8 things that you can probably just concentrate on that are probably good enough. And the time that Google wrote this, I think what it said on the copyright was 2010. I don't know that they've updated it so much since then, because a lot of the mobile site component of it, as an example, that's really not how we're designing today. Today, it's about designing just one site and making that a responsive design site so that you have one site that works on both desktop and mobile, and you really don't need to create 2 different sites anymore. So that's just one example of where this guide is perhaps just a little bit dated. So why don't we start with then setting some basic tenets to search engine optimization and your approach to that, or what your approach should be. So if it is in effect a search engine, the fuel for that engine are the keywords, right? So keywords would be anything that someone, our user, types into a search engine like Google in the search bar. Those words that they put in there are the keywords. Those are the words that you're going to try to match in your own website so that you get ranked highly for the search results to those words when typed into the search bar. So keywords are the actual fuel to everything. And that's where you really need to start before you even start optimizing. You need to ensure that you've got the right keywords for your audience. The next thing would be then to always use Google's lens when you're going about your search engine optimization or optimizing your website, or even just creating your website. The one thing to remember is this, when you use Google's lens, is that Google's customer are the people searching. Google's customer is not you. So because of that, Google is going to always try to deliver to the customer, which is the searcher, the most relevant result. So because of that, they will always slant on the customer side, and everything that they do will be around, is this providing the appropriate result to the person who's searching? The reason why I say you should always use this lens is that if you always use this lens, and that Google's always trying to provide the best experience for the searcher, then you're not going to need to worry as much about what kind of updates or changes Google's making to its algorithms. Rather, just feel good in knowing that you've created your site and you've created your optimization around trying to match what Google's trying to do, which is deliver to the customer the best result. So if you keep that lens, then you won't need to worry as much about what Google's doing to improve or change their algorithms. So how does Google actually work, and how does it go about ranking your site? Well, it starts with a checklist if you really want to simplify it. So I've got a picture here of that's a page within our website, within the LiveTake website. And what Google's going to do is it's going to send around its little bot, and its bot is going to scour our site, all of our pages, and it's going to mark it on a checklist. And the better that I fill out that checklist, the better it's going to organize me in its records. So what it's going to do is this bot goes back, crawls all of our pages, and in essence puts it in a online phone book of web pages, and based on the criteria and how it marks me about how the page was constructed, it's going to decide what category I should be in. So if I was looking at a phone book again, it would say that, hey, this is in our example, the heating and cooling category based on what information we got from the pages through this little robot. So that's what Google does, and that's how Google starts ranking your site. So the way you should look at that is, let's use a little analogy, and let's think of search engine optimization as a job interview. I think this is a really great analogy to explain how this works in a really simplified manner. I'm biased because I came up with this analogy, but I still think it's a pretty good one. So if you thought of it as a job interview, then step one would be, if we looked at a job search, if I was looking for a job, right, the process would start with you looking at a job posting, right? So you see a bunch of jobs posted. Well, in Google search, think of the job postings as the keywords that searchers type into Google's search box. So when somebody puts something into the search box, those keywords then are in essence the job postings, right? And now candidates are going to want to apply for that job. So number two then, again, looking at the job search first, when a job post looks like something you're qualified for, you would apply by sending in a resume. So in Google search then, think of the resume as your website. Right? So somebody put in the posting, they put in those keywords. You would then send in your resume, your website, saying, hey, we match what you're looking for. Step three, then going along the job interview again, your resume would have wording that describes experience that you have that matches what was asked for in the posting, right? So you'd write in your resume, you'd try to match the words in there to what the employer had put in their posting. So in Google search then, your website would have wording and information that matches what was typed into the search box. Step three then in the interview, human resources now gets your resume and determines you should be considered a candidate for this position because the words that you wrote in there matched what was in the job posting and it looks like you're telling the truth. In Google search then, consider this to be equivalent to the Googlebot's report of your site that says your website meets all of the criteria for the search being made, so it should be considered for ranking. So if I looked at four then in the interview process, you get called in for an interview and it's determined that what you put in your resume is the truth and you're now one of the top candidates. Well, same thing with Google then. This is like Google looking at all of the on-page SEO criteria, which you're going to learn today, of your site, and that it's in that checklist mentioned so that you got a bunch of check marks for that. And it compared to other websites that are being considered, your checklist is more complete than theirs. So you get ranked a little better. So the sixth step in the job search, the company calls your references to further cross-check your story, right? So it goes and asks other people, not yourself, and say, hey, what this guy put in his resume, is it true? Well, in Google search, this is Google using off-page SEO criteria, which are the other web properties reinforcing that your website is really about what you say it is. So off-page SEO really is other websites putting links on their site that go to your site. And if those sites talk about the same stuff that your site is talking about, that's in essence a good reference check. And Google says, hey, this site is probably about the stuff that they're talking about because another site talks about that same stuff and it's connected itself to that site. And that's, if you really, really simplify what off-page SEO is, that's what it is. And then if there's the final step here, 7, so the references pan out and you get the job. Well, with Google search then, Google finds that other web properties also say that you are what you are, you get ranked first. So if you really simplified it into an analogy, a job interview analogy, this is really how Google goes about ranking your site and determining whether or not your site should be ranked higher than another site. So we've talked a lot about this checklist then, so why don't we look at the checklist itself and simplify that. So what are all of the pieces in that checklist? As we alluded to at the beginning of this session, it all starts with keywords, right? So keywords, you need to determine what those keywords are, and that in essence are what are the words that I'm going to try to optimize my site for. In essence, what are the words that I think people are going to type in, and I'd want those people to come and visit my site. So I would suggest here that you use a page-by-page approach. Don't think of your entire site. Think of it as a page-by-page approach. And the reason being is that you really only want to target 1 to maybe 3 keywords per page. You can take it from me. It is very difficult to do this well if you have all of your keywords that you're trying to optimize for all in 1 page or 2 pages. It doesn't work well. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make, is they think only of their homepage, right? So take LiveTake as the example. You know, that would be like trying to optimize just for the page www.livetake.com. But that's not how Google works, and that's not how it's ranking all of your pages in there. So you can break it into as many pages as you like, and try to only use 1 keyword, maybe 2 keywords per page. Now, in your specific industry, so in the furnace and air conditioning industry, one of the most important keywords that you're always going to want to use is actually the city that you're in, because this type of purchase or this type of service or inquiry usually has a city qualifier in the search criteria. People don't just search, furnaces. No, they know that it needs to be installed, so they tend to put the city in front of it. So we're located in Pickering, so if I had a problem with my furnace, I would look for furnace repair Pickering. So your city is going to be important, and that's got to be something that you're going to want to optimize for. So that would be one of the key words that you want to make sure that you have alongside of the equipment and services that you provide. Now, to help you develop these keywords, so this is the work that you need to do before you even start doing any optimization. You have to decide what it is you want to actually optimize. So you need to determine what these keywords are. So there's a tool in Google. Unfortunately, it is now only located within Google AdWords. So you'll have to set up a Google AdWords account to get access to what's called Keyword Planner. And Keyword Planner then can help you, get ideas around keywords. So if I just put in, so example here, I put in furnaces and air conditioners, it gives me back a whole bunch of results and saying, hey, here are a bunch of words related to that have this particular search volume. So as an example, if you go down this list a little bit, air conditioning was one of those, and it has an average monthly search of 1,000, at least in my area. So that's got some pretty decent volume. That's probably something that I want to start optimizing for. It also gives you neat things like telling you the seasonality of that search and how the popularity of that term changes over time, which you could probably use as well in your strategy. Now, if this sounds too complicated for you and you really don't want to go create a Google AdWords account or even a dummy account so that you can get access to Keyword Planner, if you simply go into Google and search keyword tool, you'll see a bunch of other providers that give you some tools. Some are free, some cost money, but you'll have to wade through them yourselves. But it can really help you, using those tools can really help you determine what are the keywords that you want to really start optimizing for within your own website. So that's number 1, start with determining what are the words that I want to actually optimize my site or my pages for. Number 2 then is your URL, which is your web address, right? So it should contain the keyword you're targeting. It should be descriptive but brief, and the rule of thumb here is under 100 characters. And keep the keywords as close to the front as possible. And I'll show you an example here of what that means. So example, if I took my website as an example, I'll use LiveTake, and I wanted to optimize for the keyword phrase brand X furnaces, right? So that could be, Carrier furnaces, Goodman furnaces, Ream furnaces, whatever. So I'm going to call it brand X furnaces. That's what I'm trying to optimize for. I'd want to keep it as close to the front, and as close to the front you can get is just right after your actual domain name. My domain name is livetake.com. You want to get it as close as you can to that for this particular keyword that I'm going to try to optimize for. So that's what I've done here in this example for brand X furnaces. And if I took our website, then this is again that page on our website, I just highlighted that's where the URL is. It's up there in the box where the web address would go. That's the URL. This is my actual site, so it says services. You imagine here, this would actually be livetake.com/brand X furnaces. So that's step 2 in my checklist, is that I found out what my keywords are. Now I'm starting to put them into my website, and I start with my web address and the URL. Next on the checklist then is the page title. Now, after content, this is actually the most important on-page element at least for Google. It's contained in it's called a meta title tag. That's what the code actually looks like. If you were to look at the code behind your web page, it has the title tag and then the title of your page, and then in the title tag gets closed. If you were using a content management system, and if you saw last week's webinar on selling more HVAC online, we talked quickly on content management systems and how they're used to program sites and how you can use those to program your own site quite easily. You don't even need to know any of this coding. There's an actual box that's open that says title, and you just type in the title that you want for the web page and it programs it for you. But the programming would look like this, with the greater than and less than holding in the word title. That's the meta title tag. So the title of your website is not actually contained in the wording in your website itself. It's in the code on the back end that you can't see, and that's a meta title tag. So these titles are important because they're often displayed in search engine results pages. The abbreviation for that is called SERP. So if you ever heard the word SERP, that means search engine results page. That simply means when you type something into Google, you click search, the page that comes up is a SERP, that search engine results page. So all of those listings that you see there, your title is usually going to show up in part of the listing. So that's why it's important for the searcher, not just for Google ranking purposes. Rule of thumb here is keep it below 160 characters, and again, get the keyword or keywords towards the front of the title. Example, if we go with the Brand X Furnaces example, continue with that. Here's what the code would look like. It would be, title tag, Brand X Furnaces only at live take, as an example. And then how that would show up if you looked at the actual site. Again, we're using our real site, so it says services, but it would show up over to the right at the top there on the right. You see that says title. So in the tab, you would see that here. It says live take, lead generating services is what we have for this site, but you can imagine there it would be what we had in the last slide, which was Brand X Furnaces only at live take. That would show up in that title component of the web page. So now you got two things there. You got the keyword in the URL and you got the keyword in the title. You get a couple check marks for that. Next on the list then is page description. So this is a concise explanation about what your site is actually about. It's usually used by Google on search engine results pages. So the little description that you see when you get a Google search page, right? I typed in something into Google, I push search, I get a whole bunch of listings. All those listings have a little snippet there of explanation. That's usually what you had put into your description phrase. Much like the title, the description isn't visible on your page content itself. Again, it's something that's written on the back end, and it's in the coding. And it's in what's called a meta description tag. Although not that important for ranking, it's extremely important for getting someone to actually click through to your site, because that's the little snippet that they're going to read. That has to be enticing enough to get the person to click through to your site. So the rule of thumb here is keep it below 160 characters. And as an example, this might look like another language to you if you're not familiar with HTML, but that's what the actual code looks like on the back end. That's the meta description tag. And you can see right after content, we put in the widest selection of Brand X furnaces in our town only at live take. That's just as an example what I might put in the description, and that's what I would want to show up in my search pages. Again, if you're using one of those free content management systems that we talked about in last week's webinar, you don't need to know any of this coding. There's an actual box in most of these things that says, hey, what's your web page description? You just type in the description, and again, it would do the coding for you on the back end. But just to know, you wouldn't see this on your page itself. It's just in the code on the back end, and that's where Google's going to grab this information and also give you a check mark for having the keyword in that description. So I just typed in live take Inc. as an example, and I highlighted here, this is a search result page or a SERP. And what you see, proven furnace and air conditioner lead generation tools for HVAC contractors. That's the description that we've given to the live take homepage. But if you went to my homepage right now, if you went to www.livetake.com, you wouldn't see those words anywhere, right? That's just written on the back end in that meta tag describing what my site is. But you'd want to put your keywords in here. This is where you'd want to start injecting those keywords. Make sure that it's in the description. So you've got it in your URL, right? You've got it in the title, and now you have it in the description. So 3 check marks for having that keyword there. The keyword, remember in our example, is Brand X Furnaces. Next on the checklist then are headers. So these are the titles or subject lines used in the body content of your website. So if you've got paragraphs in your website of text, you might have a bold title over that paragraph, saying something. So if it was Brand X Furnaces, it might be, hey, Brand X Furnaces, and then you'd explain Brand X Furnaces there. Well, the challenge, so here's an example. So that's what it would look like. Brand X Furnaces from LiveTake. This is what we would see in the content of this fake website we're talking about, and say something like, we carry the biggest selection of Brand X furnaces in our town, and we're great, et cetera, et cetera. So Google's bot, this is the challenge. Google's bot doesn't know that that bold writing is a header unless you tell it is by using HTML coding, and you need to use these little tags called H tags, and you see this is H1. You get the biggest check mark for that, and that's what tells Google that this is a header. So look for my keyword in this header. So you have to ensure that when you're creating a web page or website, or you're getting someone to do it, that you're not just making the text bold and big, stylizing so it looks like a header. You need to make sure that you use the appropriate tag so that it tells Google that it is a header. Otherwise, it won't give you credit for it. So there are actually 6 of these H tags, and there's H1 through H6, but Google really only gives you credit for 2, maybe the first 3 of them. Okay, so at least use the 2 headers, H1 and H2, and put your keyword in those headers. And I'll give you an example. If you looked at our real website again, that would be these areas. So see where I have the big HVAC marketing services, that's actually an H1 header. So I'd want to inject my keyword in there. There's a little bit smaller one now called marketing tailored to the heating and cooling industry. I want to put my keyword in there as well. We've gone as far as to having another header called H3, and again, which is packaged marketing products. You'd want to, jam your keyword in there as well. So taking it from the top, URL has the keyword, title has the keyword, header 1 has the keyword, header 2 has the keyword, header 3 has the keyword. I get a bunch of check marks for that. Moving down the list then, we look at content. And it is the most important on-page SEO factor. So that's all of the descriptive content, text content within your site. So just as an aside, these robots can only read text. So your images don't get you a bunch of ranking juice. It's really all of the text. So as much as you can, you want to have text on your site so that you can inject these keywords. So getting back to the content then, it's what the consumer came to see or learn about, and that's why it's most important to Google. Remember how I said, think about Google's lens, how they're trying to deliver the best result to their customer, which is the searcher. Well, this information from Google's perspective is what they actually came to see. So they give the biggest check mark, if you will, for having your keywords in the actual content text of your website. So what you want to do here is create unique, useful content that makes use of your keywords as many times as naturally possible. The keyword here is natural. Google is smart enough to pick up that you are, say, jamming a keyword into a paragraph unnaturally, and it'll actually negatively impact your ranking. So you want it to be natural. So this usually means that you can probably get 1 to 3 times. You can probably get that keyword in content to make it still sound natural. And I'll give you an example right here. So going with Brand X Furnaces again, it may look like this. We've got our header, Brand X Furnaces from LiveTake. So Brand X in the header, I get a check mark for that. And then I go into my content. We carry the biggest selection of Brand X furnaces in our town, and we are great. How can we prove this? We're one of the few furnace companies in our town that has received the preferred vendor stamp from the Brand X furnace manufacturer, another check mark. Why is this important? It's important because it means that all of our installers have received the Brand X furnace installation certified training direct from the manufacturer, another little check mark there. So in quite a natural way, I've been able to inject the keyword Brand X furnace 3 times in this content. So that's some pretty good density. I'm probably going to get a pretty good check mark for that. So if we go back to our real life example, which is our web page, which of course doesn't have Brand X Furnace in it because we're a marketing company, you would find that content down there at the bottom left in this example. So you're seeing how this page is starting to fill up with check marks, right? URL, title, headers, and now my content. So I got a bunch of check marks for that if I had put the same keyword in all of these locations, right? So if you can imagine then putting Brand X Furnaces in all of these locations is going to get me a lot of check marks in Google's eyes. So moving down the list, we're now at number 7, which are images. And page content should include at least 1 image. So try to include your keyword naturally in the image file name if possible. So as an example, if you use your computer today, if you were to download an image, you get to name what that file is. So you should probably name it with the keyword that you're trying to optimize for. It doesn't hurt. So if I have a picture of, in our example, brand X furnace, I want to save it on my computer as brand X furnace, JPEG or GIF or PNG or whatever image file. But I wouldn't want to save it as, image 1 or something like that, right? Or a bunch of kooky numbers with however your camera or how it names files. Instead, I want to call it purposely, brand X furnaces. And that's step 1 for the images. Save the file name like that. So when I upload it to my web page, it's in the file name. It's there. Next, images on web pages have the ability to be assigned what's called alternative text. And that's displayed when you'll probably see if you hover your mouse over a picture, that text will usually pop up and it describes what the image is. Or if you've got, for whatever reason, got images turned off on your browser, which was a common thing that people did before we had high-speed internet. They did that, but it's a hangover. It's still in the coding today. I don't know that many people shut images off, but if you do, that's when the alternative text would show up in the area where the image would normally show up. Right, but you want to include, the point is you want to include your keyword in that alternative text, and this is only done in the coding of the web page itself. And here's what the code looks like. Again, if you're going to use a content management system, you don't need to know any of this stuff because right when you put the images in, there will be a box that says alternative text, and you just type it in there. And here we would put in brand X furnaces, and then on the back end, that content management system is going to do all of that programming for you. But if you looked at the code of your page, which is the only place that you're going to see keywords associated to the images, this is what it would look like if you viewed the source code. So if we took our site then as an example again, so that the bunch of, the computer, tablet, and laptop there at the bottom right, that's an image. I would have called that, pretend that's a furnace, I would have called that brand X furnace in terms of the image name, and then the alternative text, I would have put in there brand X furnace as well. I get another check mark for that. So again, my site is really filling up with a bunch of check marks as long as I'm using the same keyword in all of these. Next, and finally, is internal linking. So an internal link is one that points to another page on the same website. So internal links, as an example, could just be your navigation, right? You know how you see, about us, services, products, and that those are internal links. Or you might have in the body text, you might put a term there. You might make it a hyperlink because you want to explain what that thing is. Who knows? So it allows a user in the search engine bots, more importantly, to navigate through your website. So Google will take a look at this and it will give you a check mark if you use the keywords in those internal links. So the point here is to use descriptive keywords in the anchor text of the link that gives a sense of the topic or keyword the source page is trying to target. So some examples of internal links would, like I had said, would be included in your header and your footer navigation menus of your website. So an example on the code, this is what it would look like. On the link itself would have the keyword brand X furnaces. Now, the way I've placed it in the code here, that means that I wouldn't have in my navigation, don't put in words just like products. Use the keywords is what all of this is saying for you to do. So instead of putting products, I would put furnaces, air conditioners, brand X furnaces in this example. That's what the actual text link would say. It wouldn't say products, right? And then I get a check mark for that if in my link I use the actual keyword as opposed to something just generic. Now, if we take my website again here as an example, bad example because it says services, I wouldn't recommend that you do that on yours, but rather you put HVAC service and repair as an example, might be what you put for service. But at the top right there, that's where my navigation bar is. It's probably where yours is on your site, but use words that get used that contain the actual keyword that you're trying to optimize for. And then you have all of these check marks on this list. So if anything, you're going to want to take a snapshot of this picture right here because it shows you all of the areas, all of the least important on-page SEO criteria of where you want to have your keyword position. Now, when you look at it this way, you realize this would be really difficult to optimize for several different keywords. right? This is why I say optimizing for only one keyword per page is probably your best bet to get most highly ranked for that keyword, because you can get that keyword in all of these areas here, right? So how that works, then Google's little robot comes by, checks out my site, looks for all of those keywords on the checklist, and I get a whole bunch of check marks, right? I get a check mark for the URL. I get a check mark for the title. I get a check mark for having it in my internal links. I get a check mark for having it in all of my header tags. I get a check mark for having it in my content, and have a check mark for getting it in my images. And what you don't see here, I also get a check mark for having it in my description text on the back end. So if this all said brand X furnace, I should be pretty well positioned to rank highly for brand X furnaces. So some other things to consider that aren't about the keywords on your page, and that's that Google looks for trust as well. It wants to send its customers, again, using Google's lens, it wants to send its customers sites that they can trust. So it's looking for trust on your site. So if you link out to sites that have authority, so example would be manufacturer sites, that's going to be a mark of trust. So it's always good to put on your site links that shoot out to the manufacturer sites as an example, because those sites will have a lot of authority from Google, and Google will say, well, we trust this site. Along that same line, you need to have a privacy policy, or at least a terms of use link and a page with that policy or terms of use in it. That needs to be part of your site. Google's smart enough to know or to look for these particular things. It will look for a privacy policy. And again, that means that your site is more trustworthy. So again, the more trustworthy your site is, the more apt Google's going to want to present that to a searcher as a safe place to go. You'll also want to register your domain for 2+ years at a minimum. So wherever you got your domain registered today, make sure that you don't just buy it a year at a time. Make sure you buy it for 2 to 5 years as an example, because then that tells Google that this is a company. It's not a fly-by-night company. It's going to be around for a while. It uses this as a marker for that. Along that same line, then you're going to want to make your whois information public. So when you go to register a domain name, with the registrar, you have the ability to actually make the whois information private. You don't want to do that. You want to make it public. The whois information is, if you search a website right now, test it yourself, go into Google, put in some website that you want to know about, put in mine if you'd like, and then say whois after it, and it'll give you all of the information of who the website is registered to, the physical address of the company that it's registered to. And again, you want to have a real physical address, but you want to make that public, because Google will look at that and say, okay, well, this must be a trustworthy company because it looks like it's real. You can imagine how shady it would look to a company like Google if they went in and they did this search and they saw that the domain expires in 1 month and the information of who owns it is private. They don't want you to see it. That looks like a shady company. So don't do that to yourself. Make sure you register your domain for more than 2 years, or 2 years at a minimum, and then make sure that your whois information is public. And then finally, the last other thing to consider is that speed matters, I think. So from what I've been able to see, I don't know that it matters a ton on the desktop side, but definitely for Google on the mobile side, the speed at which your web page actually loads looks to be important to Google. And what I've included here is you can actually go use Google's page speed insights, and there's the URL for it, developers.google.com/speed/pages/speed/insights. I urge you to go there yourselves, type in the name, put in your URL of your website, and see how it ranks in terms of speed in Google's eyes. I did it with our site, just so you can see what it looks like, and here's what the results look like when you do it. So I did it for LiveTake. It actually gives you a score. So mobile is the default tab. And what happens here gave us a 73 out of 100 for speed. So we got to work on that a little bit, but that is actually still pretty good when you compare it to other sites. So not bad, but we got a little bit of work to do there. And if you go down to the bottom, it gave us 100 out of 100 on user experience. So Google's actually testing to see how fast this thing loads on mobile and how easy is it to use on mobile. So mobile is huge for Google because this is also the default view that they give you. So just remember that as you're starting to develop now, mobile matters to Google. So type it in, see what speed you get. I then went over to the desktop side or tab, and we got an 85 out of 100. So that looks actually pretty good. So this thing loads pretty fast, and it's done pretty well. But it also shows you how you can fix some of these things here to make it actually run even faster, which will probably be beyond most of you, unless you're an actual programmer to be able to do that. Again, if you use the content management systems, some of them have these third-party plugins that you can just install and will actually start optimizing your site for speed and make it work better. The reason I'm giving you this here is that you should do this. If you had your site built by someone else or another company, go run this. And if your scores are lousy, go back to those people and ask them if they know what they're doing. Okay? Go in there, find your speeds. If your speeds are lousy, and Google let you know that because it'll put the numbers in red. See the boxes I've got green and on orange here, which aren't bad. Green's good, orange isn't bad. But if it's in red, you want to go back to the people who made this site for you, and you want to question whether they really know what they're doing. Okay, so if anything, do that. So finally, then let's talk about quickly search engine optimization versus paid search. So if I were to do a search, I just did auto mechanics in Pickering here, where we're situated. I would get this as part of my search engine result page. So these two portions here, the top and the side, those are paid search, right? So they have nothing to do with the search engine optimization that you do on your site. You do this through, in this example, because it's on Google, you do this through Google AdWords, and you pay for a cost per click to get ranked highly in these ads, and that's paid search. Then if I scroll down, so the map part and the bottom of the page there, those are the organic or the organic search results, which are the result of my search engine optimization efforts. So here is where good search engine optimization is going to play in. You're going to rank higher in these areas here. Now, what I wanted to mention is that you want to do both of these. And our recommendation to you would be that, you know, if you're looking to do search engine optimization, you really want to start revamping your site. Well, I wouldn't say go hire a company right now and go redo your whole site to make sure that you're getting good search engine optimization in there, because you're probably not going to see results right away. It's going to take some time. And you've got time to go and make these changes. What we would suggest that you do is actually use paid search, because it's a real affordable way of experimenting. And experiment with what keywords are actually working, what keywords actually convert to customers. So what's more important is that these words actually turn into customers. It's the ranking component is a means to an end, and the end is you getting more business. So what you want to do then is test through paid search what words, what combinations of those words, and then build singular landing pages and determine which, what design actually takes visitors and turns them into customers. And then you take what you learned in paid and you park that and you say, when I'm going to redevelop my website or pages on my site, I'm going to do it this way that I know works. And that's a nice way to marry the two of these things. So we always suggest to our customers is that let us do a paid search campaign for you, and let's work with some landing pages and developing those landing pages, which is a lot less costly than creating a full website. And let's find out what pieces really work, and then let's pull all those pieces together of things that work, and then let's go build a website for you that actually turns into business. And that would be my parting recommendation for you. So I hope that this webinar helped. I hope it helped demystify search engine optimization for you somewhat. I also hope that it didn't confuse you more. But send me some comments. Let me know how we're doing. So I'll end it as we always do, and I'll tell you a little bit about us. And again, that's me, Chris Corey, and we are specialized in the HVAC space. We have strong HVAC support relationships, and that has to do with our background. So I previously worked the last 9 years of my career heading up marketing for one of the country's largest HVAC contractors. So there's a lot of deep experience there, as well as a lot of good support relationships. So we know all of the senior leaders at all of the major manufacturers. We also know many specialty agency firms who've worked in the HVAC space. So we can actually get projects done for you that actually deliver results, and we don't need a bunch of direction because we know what we're doing. So you won't need to explain to us how you want things done. We know. We are HRII member companies, and the reason for that is that we wanted to get access to contractors like yourselves, as well as we wanted to be accessible to you. And we thought through the HRII Association that would be the best way to accomplish that. We're dedicated to helping contractors, and because of that, our purpose is making marketing easy. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to package up marketing solutions into products that have a list price that you would buy right off the shelf. They look like many of the other things that you buy. You know exactly what you're going to pay for it, and you know exactly what you're going to get out of it. And that's how we're trying to make marketing easy. And we're also willing to work as a true partner. So if you were to go to our site, and if you were to download our product catalog and you didn't see something there that really fit what you're trying to do, or it really didn't fit your budgets, we want to work with you as a partner. Let's have a conversation, and let's see if we can't customize something that does work for you and for your particular organization. And finally, we're a source of free support materials, I hope, as evidenced by these free webinars. So please join us every week. We'll be providing webinars like this to try to help you grow your business and make your business better. And you don't have to buy anything from us to view this stuff. So I think next week what we'll do is we'll tackle the subject of advertising. And let's look at the different marketing vehicles that you can use for advertising. So, print, radio, television, online. Let's look at different combinations. Let's look at why you would use a particular vehicle versus another. And then if you had to make some sacrifices and only pick one or two, which ones you should probably look to use. So that's what we'll do for next week's webinar. We'll go over advertising and advertising vehicles. Shortly, in about 15 minutes or so, you should receive an email, by the way, with a link to the replay video for this particular webinar so that you can view it again at your leisure or share it if you'd like. So that concludes this week's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you next week. Have a great weekend, everybody.